David. Yes, you're handing over to us here in the M Shed and to Trude.
So, hi, everyone. It is with really great pleasure, honor, and the deepest respect that I should now introduce and announce the 2022 winner of the Icae Lifetime Contribution in Art Ethnography Award. I know it really feels great to actually be able to do this in person. I've been doing it twice online, and it's, how do you give a prize online? It's great to be here with you. Award. It's a tradition that we started 2 years ago, and the decision to start this tradition, it sprung out of a deeply felt need to recognize, to honor, and to show our gratitude to those who have made significant contributions to the development and nurturance of the field of art ethnography. And this involves developing and nurturing art ethnography as a form of scholarship, as a way of relating to others, and also as a way of life. Now, I would like to pause slightly here and share some thoughts about the title and hence the content of the award. It is a Lifetime Contribution Award. So what is a contribution? And again, I looked into the dictionary, this time Merriam-Webster, and it says that a contribution is the giving or supplying of something that plays a significant part in making something happen. So, giving and making something happen. And there's a Lifetime Contribution Award. It is not first and foremost a reward for outstanding solo achievements. Rather, it is a recognition of generous and altruistic actions and mindsets. It is not given in recognition of building a sparkling career for oneself, but for doing something with and for others. It is about building community and sparkling together. At the very heart of a contribution award is the idea that through giving, sharing, and building community, something can happen that is bigger and more important than a long line of solo achievements. It is something that stretches beyond oneself in terms of space and time. This year's winner is truly a contributor. It is someone who for decades has shared with and nourished others. Someone who has so generously given and made art ethnography happen, both in terms of contributing to the development of art ethnographic scholarship and to living and inspiring others to live an authentic art ethnographic life. This year's winner is a true team worker with this wonderful combination of having a warm and generous heart, a bright and wise mind, and the capacity to do and not only talk art ethnography. When thinking about this year's winner, my mind drifted to one of my favorite childhood books. The book was about a little house. It was a happy little house until the day when the city started expanding around it. After some time, the little house was squeezed between skyscrapers, and the people who lived in it, they moved out and the house started decaying. The house worried about the future. It did, however, find comfort in having one true and good friend, a bird named Hubert. Hubert would come to the house in the evening and tell stories about the world he had flown around and seen. He would sleep in the house every night, and the house was happy to provide him with shelter. Then one day, the local authorities made a decision to tear the house down. It was too mundane and not in line with modern times and standards and efficiency. The house was terrified. Was this the end? But then something wonderful happened. Just as the bulldozers were ready to tear the whole house down, Hubert arrived with a flock of his bird friends. The birds filled the entire house, and for unifying their strength, they lifted the house and they flew away with it. They flew and they flew all night, and when the house awoke, it found itself far out in the countryside, in a lovely meadow. It was safe. It was with friends. And together, the little house, Hubert, and the other birds developed a little friendly community. To me, this is a lovely story about resistance, of not giving up, of working against the grain, of how lifting as a flock can make a difference. It is a story of the importance of little houses, of little birds, and of little voices, of standing for something, of integrity, of how the conviction of one little bird, Hubert, can make something happen. Here's winner shares some similarity and sustained development within ethnography, narratives, and reflexivity since the mid-1990s. Through her enduring commitment, she has developed the field with and for others. Her personal relational style has nurtured, supported, and encouraged many of us who are here today and elsewhere. She has had a strong focus on ethical practice and has been a lighthouse for others, reminding us that our actions and practices are always somehow relational. Our choices of what to do or what not to do affect others and their lives. They can make something happen. And thus, through our choices and actions, we have a responsibility. This year's winner has been a spokesperson for small stories and for small voices. Through an accessible and clear writing style, she has introduced numerous students and academics to theories and practices of writing and healing in challenging contexts such as trauma, abuse, and addiction. Through supporting and supervising students and academics over her 30 years academic career, she has shapen ways of life. Her contributing way of life, the giving, the sharing, and making something happen, also runs like a common thread through her approach to publishing. She is widely published and has authored and edited important and inspiring books, privileging a combination of autoethnographic, narrative, and reflexive approaches to research, which provide a safe space for others to publish their autoethnographic work. She remains a true contributor through her sustained involvement and contribution to the international autoethnographic community. Caring deeply for what she believes in and for others, she is a true autoethnographic Hubert. Perhaps the following lines from one of the nominators sums it all up. And this is a quote: "She is generous with her ideas, her time, and her hugs. And she can cut through bullshit like a knife through hot butter. She really is amazing." So everyone, this year's ICAE Lifetime Contribution in Autoethnography Award goes to the truly amazing Kim Etherington. As a little recognition, I'm moving away from the screen now, sorry.
It's fine.
As a little token of appreciation, we have a piece of pottery made by Peter Swanson. And it's kind of piece of earth, something handmade. We want to give you something that was kind of belonged to earth. So this is for you, Kim.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. I need to get my breath back.
Yeah, take a moment. Yeah.
Can I stand up?
Yeah, you're welcome to stand. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm just so overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed by the letter I received, which was beautifully worded from the committee through Trude. And I didn't expect the additional, so thank you. That was such a lovely introduction. I had to write it down because I thought I'm never going to manage otherwise. And I started just saying thank you. Thank you for honouring me with this year's award. It means so much because it comes from this organisation, this conference. I've been through quite an emotional journey since receiving that invitation. I thought, you know, they've sent it to the wrong person. It's a mistake. It must be meant for somebody else, but I am here. And I spent a long time wondering how to respond. I had a word with Katrina and I said, I don't have to give a speech, do I? And she said, yes, you do, but you've got to keep it to 10 minutes. So I'm doing my best here. So it did feel appropriate that I should respond autoethnographically. And it was really interesting to hear what you said, Trude, about the title, because that's the thing I got really hung up on. And it really got me thinking about when I started contributing. Like many women of my generation, I married young, having worked for only a year after qualifying as an occupational therapist in 1961. Our first child was born 11 months later. In those days, women gave up work. They had to give up work 3 months before their child was born. But there was no maternity leave, there was no maternity pay. And because my husband was studying for a PhD, money was extremely tight. I started working 2 afternoons a week as a locum OT when Michael was 6 months old, leaving him with my mother. A few days after his 3rd birthday, when I was pregnant with our 2nd child, both of Michael's hips disintegrated overnight, and he lay flat on his back for a year, tied down on a frame, legs as wide apart as they would go, waiting for the head of both femurs to regrow. So I gave up work to look after him. There was no carer's allowance, mobility allowance, or any other allowance to support people in that role at that time. Peter, our 2nd child, was born during the period Michael was on his frame. When Dave gained his PhD, we moved away from my hometown, Liverpool, to his new job in Somerset. Michael was off the frame by then and attended the village school wearing calipers. 2 years later, when Peter went to play school, I started work again and spent 8 years working between 3 different hospitals, mornings only. Career development wasn't on the cards for me, but I continued to work part-time to earn money where I could and when I could. I spent a further 8 years working with a community for autistic people and 8 years with social services. I seem to have an 8-year job change timer going on, didn't I? We had our 3rd son, Matthew, when I was 35 after several distressing miscarriages. I went to university for the first time in my life when I was 47, 1 day a week for 2 years to retrain as a counsellor while still working at social services. That postgraduate diploma course was life-changing for me. I discovered that I had a good brain and that I really enjoyed learning. I also had my first experience of being a counselling client, the start of a profound healing journey that continues to this day. I'd barely scraped 5 O-levels and a single A-level in English at my convent grammar school. That was a very turbulent period of my life. The trauma of my early childhood had begun to catch up with me and coincided with adolescence and ongoing problems within my severely dysfunctional family. I'd done well at the 11+ exam and been placed in the top stream when I started grammar school. But at the end of the first term, I asked to be placed in a lower stream, realizing that I couldn't cope. I was 15 when my father died, just before my O-levels. Those are GCSEs now. An elderly Latin teacher suggested I might need to leave school now to support my mother. I had 5 older brothers and 2 younger brothers, but as the only girl in an Irish Catholic family, the assumption was that I was God's gift to my mother for her old age, and my job was to take care of her. She would have been 53 at that time. However, I did stay on at school and was offered a place at the Liverpool College of Occupational Therapy when I was 17. This security allowed me to switch off, to give up art and French A-levels and to daydream my life away for that last year at school. I spent most of my time in the pottery shed, throwing pots, creating clay models, or chiseling away at a lump of sandstone into a sleeping swan. Sometimes I bunked off to hide under a favourite and forbidden rhododendron bush on the far side of the lake, reading Keats and writing full poems full of longing and loneliness. Throughout those teenage years, I wasn't free to learn. My mind and body were struggling to make sense of the internal chaos, which manifests as feelings of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thinking. This was in the 50s, against a family and societal background where feminism was an unknown or dirty word, and where both of my Irish parents carried their own unresolved traumas. It was many years later that I, or anybody, would understand the profound impact of childhood trauma on the emotional life and developing brain of a child, all the problems that would follow that child into adulthood. When I completed my OT training, I started working at the Catholic Children's Protection Society. Ironic, really, having myself been a Catholic child in need of protection. I had dreamed of being a nun or a social worker, which would have meant going to university, which I believed to be out of reach. At that time, OT training wasn't a university course, and because the college was local, I would be able to live at home, take care of my mother, and attend college daily. It was only much later that I realized how much I'd missed out on by not moving away from home and separating from my family like most of my peers. On completion of the counselling course, still working half-time in social services, I went on to complete a master's in counselling, training and supervision, age 52. My starved brain demanded I should continually feed it. So before I finished the master's, I'd started a literature search for my PhD, which I completed at the age of 55. About that time, I was offered my first part-time academic-related post at the University of Bristol, where I had studied, teaching counsellors to work in GP surgeries. Several years later, I was given full academic status, which allowed me to progress career-wise. My academic contracts had always averaged about 0.3 of full-time equivalent, that's a day and a half a week. So my research and writing was undertaken in my own time. In the meantime, I had a short article published in the first-person column of The Guardian, followed by another short piece in The Observer. These were my very first autoethnographic writings. I had begun to tell my stories, using a pseudonym, of course. The risk of being identified was terrifying, but it was an exciting period for me, and the readers' letters forwarded to me by the newspaper in response to what I'd written told me I wasn't alone. My personal experience was indeed social, political, and cultural, and others had resonated and responded gratefully, telling me their own traumatic stories in return. I'd never even heard the word autoethnography at the time, but I dipped my toe in the water and found it was warm and receptive. So I continued, always seeking a home where I could join with like-minded others. I was lucky to be briefly taken under the wing of a strong female feminist professor at the university, who encouraged me to apply for progression, something I didn't even realize was open to me as a part-timer. I took her advice and was probably the most surprised person of all when I was eventually offered a personal chair at the age of 66. I retired from the university when I was 70, 12 years ago. Now I continue to see clients 2 days a week in my therapy practice, which I've always run alongside my academic roles. And I'm fortunate that people who want to do narrative and creative research continue to seek me out as an independent scholar. While writing this, I have come to realize how much my inner urge to roam and learn and the various pathways I've trodden have shaped the contributions I have made. And I'm not done yet. There are still hurdles I need to overcome before I can share some of the most important stories of my life, and I'm not ready for that yet. I was told that I'd been chosen to receive this Lifetime Contribution Award because my work has nurtured, inspired, and supported the field of autoethnography and the people within it. I was deeply touched by those words. The people within it matter greatly to me. I know the challenges involved in writing and sharing our stories. I know the dedication and courage it takes to risk exposing our vulnerabilities and strengths in the public and academic domain. I know too the importance of finding a safe, supportive, and stimulating environment where we can begin step by step to do that work, with great care for the tender parts of ourselves and others. I would like to thank the many people who've taught me, supported me, and encouraged me throughout my lifetime so far, especially my husband Dave and our 3 sons, Michael, Peter, and Matthew. And of course, my dear friends, some of whom are here today. I have learned so much from clients, students, research participants, and from all of you. I'm grateful to have had you all in my life. Finally, I want to give special thanks to Katrina, who has grown this community from the fibers of her heart, and to the amazing committee members who have supported her along the way. Your hard work, especially over these last few difficult years, has kept intact the precious threads that link us all together, wherever we are in the world, whether in person or online, or a bit of both. This is an extraordinary achievement. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart.